process that we've chosen to do is to adopt the zoning resolution, review it with the resident input, go through the zoning commission, also go through the board of trustees for final adoption. Once that's been continued, because we don't close it out until we get everything in order, then we'll go to the land use map. Any type of modifications on that, that'll be put also through the same process, and eventually we'll adopt both.
So no land use planning has been done to your knowledge at this point?
Correct.
No amendment to, there's an existing land use plan.
An existing land use plan, the update to the
Right.
plan
The
has not
updates do
commenced yet.
It has,
Okay.
it has been our policy that the zoning resolution will give us guidelines on how to amend the land use plan.
Okay.
But in our process is that the land use plan doesn't get amended until after the zoning resolution is approved.
Just so everybody understands, the zoning resolution is your official land use plan for the ORC. Your land use plan is simply a guide that can be used to guide you in your decisions for future land use.
It's an illustration, where
Well-
the one is writing, obviously, the land use map is an illustration of that zoning resolution. So you have certain districts, you have certain overlays, so all those things that are in our land use, that are in our zoning resolution will be incorporated in our land use map.
Well, I don't know if you've seen this, Deer Park has a very nice 2035 vision plan that they did. There's a former employee of the township, Michael Behrens, I believe, that worked on this. I would love to see the township have something like this. I hope that's part of the agreement with Jacobs. I am a little concerned though, because if what you said is true, Mr. Holbert, and no work has been done on the land use or the land plan revision, as I understand it, the original $97,000 allocated for the entire project, which included the land use plan and the zoning, has already been spent. And there have been additional invoices sent to the township. And this is, as you're explaining, only for zoning, nothing for land use plan. There's a serious lack of monetary oversight apparently. In addition, $111,000 or whatever dollars for zoning revisions is of concern.
So I can answer that if you would like. Jacobs has done background work on the land use plan, so we will not be receiving additional bills for that background work. The additional expenses on the zoning resolution, where there were a lot of comments, there was a lot of additional work performed by Jacobs based on comments, and their initial fee did not take that into consideration. They asked to be compensated accordingly, and the board approved that.
Mr. Holbert, did you know that?
I knew most of it. So any of the invoicing, I don't see the invoicing. So in dealing with Jacobs themselves and dealing with comments that go back and forth after they give us some type of preliminary, I then send them back comments based on the review of what the document said, based on review from the residents, based on review from the trustees, and based on review from legal counsel. Now, legal counsel hasn't done their review yet, but everybody else has basically had a chance to review it, and that's why we break it down. What we're trying to do, again, I don't want to, this is part of my presentation with planning and zoning to update the board, but we're trying to make it simpler for the residents to understand and to help us develop this document.
Maybe if the residents were included, they would understand it. And
I would think if the
unfortunately-
residents be included, they would need to show up.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there was supposed to be a public outreach effort. And the notes say it will be minimal as per township request. I'm just wondering who requested that.
So that was a provision, if we did request it, Jacobs would perform it. We decided not to do that at this stage. We are doing that as part of the adoption process.
So no public input.
That's not accurate, there is public input.
I have
Okay.
comments, and what we've done, again, just so you know, we put it on the website. I've requested, because we get lots of, I won't say lots, we get a few questions regarding specific items, basically personal agenda items. So somebody may want chickens, so they make that their agenda item, And now that's important to them, but there's usually only one comment on that. So what I do is I take that and I put it in a specific chapter, and then when we discuss those chapters, for example, 1 through 4, 5 through 9, 9 through 12, which I'll get into tonight, that's when we address those items so that the residents do get input, they do get a voice, they do get a chance to express their concerns with what the zoning resolution says. I take that, I accumulate it, and then eventually we'll put it in front of the board of trustees, and then they'll adopt it, make revisions, whatever they choose to do.
And I'm glad that the residents have finally been given the ability to provide some input via the zoning board, because the zoning board members themselves, which I view as critical components for the township, have not been part of this process, and I have spoken with them personally.
I have a question. Okay, we're seeing all this come out with capital investment in this, what's going on down around the corner. But the last land use plan, the full plan was 2002, like 16 years ago. Okay, going forward, in 2008, you came out with the township came out with a drawing, just a drawing, and that was it. And so we're going back basing it on that and the SBI from 2004 that was put together to get business into the township. Going forward, after we get this, are we gonna do one, I've been talking to Green Township, Anderson, it seems like every 5 years, they revise it. Can we get into a schedule where we're doing this and keeping this up to date so that we're not behind?
Yeah, so previous boards did not have the interest in updating it every 5 years, and when Mr. Weedman came on board, we began that process. And the board prior to yours didn't really have the gumption to do it either, so I think Harry and I kind of forced it on the board, which is why we're at. The plan going forward is every 5 years, but the thing about the land use plan, it's gonna become more like the Deer Park and other city-type plans, that they are living documents, right? So if we do some type of traffic study or we do some type of neighborhood study, that will be slid into the plan, so the plan is constantly being updated. That's our charge and our hope going forward, so we don't get these situations. And so many land use plans all over the country and around, they're done, they sit on a shelf for 20 years, nobody looks at them. Then all of a sudden, somebody wants to do something, oh, let's go to our 20-year-old land use plan, oh, no, sorry, it's not in this 20-year-old land use plan. And that's the thing that we want to avoid going forward.
Well, I hope to participate more in that. I also hope to participate in parks meetings. I came last month and asked if parks had been disbanded. Evidently, it is not going to meet again this month, which means there has not been a parks meeting since its largest event. I just wanted to see if the township administrator or the trustees plan to have a parks meeting in 2018.
I'm sure there will be parks in 2018.
Okay.
Mike had some
Mike's
medical.
Mike's got some health
family
issues.
medical issues that,
Correct.
without getting into any detail, where he was forced to cancel the October meeting. He's aware of the fact that circumstances beyond his control have pushed off those meetings, but he will be getting back together those meetings once the family issues are resolved.
Okay, is there anyone else that could host them? Should that continue in perpetuity?
I don't think it's going to continue for perpetuity.
Okay.
Well, when was the last meeting? When was the last parks meeting? How long has it been?
June. I was told at that meeting that there would not be another meeting for several months because there was nothing to discuss. That's a concern to me. But I am happy to learn that Sycamore Township does, in fact, have tennis courts. I've been asking about tennis courts for about 2 years now. And everyone said, no, we do not have tennis courts. But if you walk back there, there are some tennis courts. There are some trees growing up in the middle of them, but they are in fact tennis courts. I don't know how they got in such a state of disrepair, but I digress. I hope as part of the land use plan that this township looks again at the recreation center. I learned that there was a proposal for a recreation center, which a lot of people worked on. I am jealous of the people that live in Blue Ash because they get to go to their rec center for a much lower cost than I pay to take my family to an equivalent facility. And for the people of Sycamore Township, I am certain that they would want that. I hope you will make that part of the plan.
Well, they didn't want it last time because it got
It was
shot down at
proposed.
the voting.
It was.
It was on for
It was
11.
voted down at a very depressed time in our country, sir. It was after September 11th and when the stock market was near its bottom. It's a very sad
They were
time.
pretty clear they didn't want it at the time.
Exactly. This country has come back, sir. My only last question is, does anyone on the township know how many people have died in Sycamore Township of a heroin overdose in 2018?
Not off the top of my head. I would be strictly guessing if I just threw something out there. But I will say 5 or 6, maybe 8.
That much?
I'm gonna guess that, yeah.
Okay.
Not all of them residents.
No, not all of them are residents. A lot of them are travelers, some of them are from parties that are there. And then some of them are just repeated abusers. That, like I said it in the Tuesday's workshop, and you weren't here. We find that a lot of these guys that are overdose people or heroin users move around. So we find the same person's name on a run report that we might have went to a house in High Point, we might have went to a house in Dillonvale, we might have went to a house in Ross Point, and then all of a sudden they show up somewhere else.
Yeah.
So they use till they're not welcome, or they run out of money, or they owe somebody, or whatever the case may be, and then they split to another location, and then they start there. They're basically hitchhikers, and it's, you can't, I mean, you can go shut a house down, but there'll be another one down the street. You know, or they might end up in Green Township, they might end up in Anderson, who knows? But it's hard to track those people.
Yeah, it really shook me up to hear someone died so close to my house recently.
Sure,
I didn't
sure.
know how prevalent it was.
Channel 12 reported tonight, a couple of hours before this meeting, and I could have the numbers reversed. There have been 9 heroin overdose deaths in Hamilton County in the last 11 days, or perhaps it was 11 overdose deaths in 9 days. My apology, I don't know.
And,
But there's been an uptick here recently.
So Denny, you were at the meeting today, the County Heroin Coalition. If you get info like that, hopefully coming from the county in any means, I think that should be in the newsletter, as depressing as it is. It is a fact of our country right now, and we can't hide from it. So I appreciate you sharing that info. Thank you, John.
Next.
J. Janus Jr.
My name is J. Janus Jr. I reside at 4462 Daffodil Avenue, Sycamore Township, Ohio. A few questions tonight. No particular order. And no specific person. I believe Mr. Miller said anyone can answer these questions. So, at the recent public forum held by the Deer Park Community Schools, there was mention of a possible land swap with the current, where they store the buses on the side of the high school. The land swap would be involving the business adjacent to my property, Plus Plumbing on Lancaster Avenue. The school superintendent at those forums indicated he did not wish the current buses to be stored adjacent to the school building, the high school complex. And they're also talking about moving my words, repair shop for the buses to this location. The current location in Deer Park, contrary to their zoning code, has military concertina wire atop the fencing around the buses. Military concertina wire, for those that may not be, it's jagged, and the purpose is to deter incursions by the enemy. This is particularly used during the Vietnam War era, more recently in Afghanistan and Iraq, to deter the enemy, the insurgents from approaching. And I would like to know, also, there are, to my knowledge, some locations, be they residential or businesses from prior to the zoning coming into effect in our township, and I guess you'd be calling that the grandfather clause, that may have barbed wire for perimeter fencing. So, in no particular order, I would like to ask if a residential property in Sycamore Township has barbed wire and it is sold, would they be allowed to retain the barbed wire, or would they have to remove the barbed wire?
So you have, so we have a provision in the zoning code that does not allow for barbed wire fences. Harry, what do you think? I would say use has not changed. It is a non-permitted use. There is no specific resolution that requires barbed wire to be removed. I would say until that fence is changed, it can stay.
That would be my same opinion.
But here's the real question, how long has it been there is a real thing, because if you can prove that it was erected after 1999, then we could say it's a legal structure, go after it that way, I believe.
And just like we would any other
I
fence.
think so, yeah.
And if I may ask, would that apply both to residential lots and commercial lots?
So it would, because fences are regulated in a separate chapter, and it would apply and specifically conditioned inside the commercial district.
A fence is a fence.
Yeah.
The only relief that you really get is when you're dealing with industrial districts. And you're permitted to put a taller fence, up to 8 foot tall, but they're required to also provide screening if they're using it as a storage facility.
If the school district is successful, in their words, doing the land swap, which would put the bus garage adjacent to my property, would they be then allowed to put the concertina wire or barbed wire on top of the fence that is there now?
No.
They would not, because
No.
it's not permitted.
Okay, thank you.
Now, they could, just to fully answer your question though, if they applied for that, their request would be denied, and then they could appeal that, and it would go to probably the Board of Zoning Appeal in that case, because it's appealable.
Okay, thank you. My next question is regarding the JEDs. It's my understanding, once the JED districts were established in the township, there's there's multiple governmental entities involved. 2 of the JEDs are overseen by Madeira. One is Amberley, one is Deer Park. Since I've been to many of those meetings as a citizen, I made requests for copies of the financial statements that they provide to the trustees and so forth, and other governmental entities that are represented. I happen to notice, and even though there have been changes in personnel, that Deer Park, when they first started, they were the only one that didn't list any title by their governmental entity on their figures. Currently, within the last year or so, Deer Park has hired a new either tax administrator, tax commissioner. That person has decided to put their name, first name only, in the upper right corner of their report. However, there is nothing on that page or any of their pages they submit to you that indicates that this is from Deer Park, Ohio. And I guess I ask of you, is that considered good financial business practices when we're talking about thousands of millions of dollars to accept a report that doesn't clearly show the governmental entity it purports to show?
I'm gonna say that, from my perspective, the documents that we review at our JEDS meetings are internal documents for informational purposes and are not official, financial reports.
But do you believe they're public records, sir?
They're public records, yes.
Okay, but my belief is, since the other 3 communities put their name, meaning their governmental entity name, I believe Deer Park's name should be on their reports.
We can certainly ask them for that.
Okay,
I talked to BJ about that, it's taken care of.
okay. Recently with Mr. Fortin, some people from the High Point community, Mr. Holbert, there's been some discussions, even including tonight, about lighting districts. Recently, when I touched base with Mrs. Campbell in the office, the current contact liaison, my words for Duke, who is the representative for Duke, that Sycamore Township would contact for lighting districts. She laughed and she basically said that person retired. So I realized people may retire, which is rather common all the time. However, I would like to know if, Mr. Porter, since you said you were in charge of that, by email, if you could provide me with the current person, the new person that's in charge of that, their name, their title, their office phone, their office email. I think that would be helpful for any of us that may be interested in having lighting districts in the future. Not to usurp your authority, but sometimes there may be little things that have been missed, and if we have to contact a person that he or she may say, put this in, take this out, that would be my request or my suggestion. So in other words, I'm just asking if you can have that information forwarded to me.
Mr. Janus,
I'm sorry.
Duke said that to you, or Ms. Campbell said that
Ms.
to you?
Campbell said, at one time you had the person's name listed
Right.
on the form.
Right,
She told me that person retired.
yes.
And as far as I know, and don't quote me on it, but the last month when I ran off the form and the information, the newest person's name is not on
Okay, all right.
there. Okay?
They've had a lot of turnover in that office recently, I know that, so. I'll find out who the current person is, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. 2 nights ago, the township trustees had a special meeting. It was, my words, part 3 of this ongoing hearings for, with the capital group project in the Kenwood area of Sycamore Township. Mr. Miller at the last meeting referred to this process as an administrative hearing. Unknowns to me and many of the people in the audience, apparently there was an arrangement prior to that meeting which allowed a representative of Capital to phone in to this meeting room when people were present during that meeting, to ask some questions of people that were presenting testimony. I guess I would like to know by a show of hands, were any of you, of the trustees, or any of you sitting there aware of this arrangement that would allow somebody from Capital to be able to phone in during that meeting?
Yeah, I told them we would try it. It didn't work out well, and I told Mr. Barrett he needed to cease that procedure. It just wasn't working.
So you were the one that allowed it for that